Everyone knows that Chen Yuechuan has an inseparable sister, Chen Miu, though not related by blood. They were closer than many real siblings. On the day of our wedding, Chen Miu did everything she could to stop it, claiming that only one of us could live. Chen Yuechuan didn't care. He locked her at home and insisted on going through with the wedding. It wasn't until she cut her wrists and bled to death that he finally panicked. Since then, he retreated to the mountains. Living by Chen Miu's grave for a lifetime, he abandoned our marital bond, demanding that I kneel before Chen Miu and repent in a low voice. Even my child was not spared. He watched indifferently as I miscarried and was rushed to the emergency room. He said, "An eye for an eye. This is just the beginning." Unwilling to endure further humiliation, I chose to jump from a building. Before dying, I saw Chen Yuechuan standing in the street, smiling with relief, murmuring, "Sister, the one who killed you has finally gotten her comeuppance." When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day of our wedding. This time, I would not choose him. "Brother, please don't marry her." "What are you talking about? Today is supposed to be a joyful day for me. Stop your nonsense or I'll lock you at home." Chen Yuechuan's angry roar woke me up, and I suddenly looked up, in the familiar environment, with the familiar voice. I looked down at my white wedding dress, feeling somewhat dazed. Yes, I had been reborn at the most unforgettable moment in my memory. In my previous life, I was ecstatic, unable to contain my excitement about marrying the love of my life, but now, facing it all over again, I was trembling with fear. I would never forget the indifference in Chen Yuechuan's eyes as he looked at me, nor the uncontrollable joy he showed just before I died. Now it seems, he had not fully chosen me. While blaming Chen Miu, there was also pain and struggle in his eyes. Perhaps even he hadn't realized, his relationship with Chen Miu had crossed the boundaries of ordinary siblings, gradually succumbing to affection and tenderness, until Chen Miu's suicide made him fully aware, and he shifted all the blame onto me. While he comfortably basked in the sympathy of others, he loudly condemned me to the world, blaming me for Chen Miu's death. If it weren't for me, why would Chen Miu have died? Why would he end up guarding her grave for life? I was pelted with rotten eggs and spoiled vegetables by people who detested me, and even verbally abused. I took a deep breath, suppressing the complex emotions inside. This time, I would not stand for it. "Chen Yuechuan, if you really intend to marry, then don't expect to see me again." A piercing scream pulled my thoughts from the past. I got up, opened the door, and saw Chen Yuechuan coming towards me. Angry, I quickly grabbed him. "Your sister is still young, don't be harsh with her." Chen Yuechuan was about to complain to me when his expression suddenly froze, staring at me, unable to react. It was well known that I disliked Chen Miu, and he had even prepared how to appease me, but he never expected to hear such words from me. Immediately, his eyes filled with uncontrollable anger. "But she spoke about you like that, about my future wife. How can I not care about this?" I asked, shaking my head nonchalantly. "She is your sister, after all. If things get too tense between you, how will you get along in the future?" Seeing his furrowed brow, I shook my head with a smile, took his arm, and spoke gently. "Don't worry, I'm not going to hold a grudge against her. We need to think of the bigger picture. She's your most important family member. Without her, the wedding wouldn't be complete. Do you want me to live with regret during the most important moment of my life?" Hearing this, Chen Yuechuan's expression gradually softened, replaced by a look of emotion and relief. He smiled faintly, indulgently reaching out to stroke my head. "Having you as my wife is the greatest fortune of my life." Chen Yuechuan's parents, standing nearby, nodded almost imperceptibly, very pleased with my response. In the distance, Chen Miu's hysterical screams continued. Chen Yuechuan quickly turned and walked towards her. I watched his departing figure until he crouched beside Chen Miu and affectionately embraced her. Chen Miu's expression shifted from anger to joy, and finally to intense pride. She glanced at me provocatively without leaving any traces. In a past life, I was unaware of the true nature of their relationship, assuming they were just unusually close siblings. Now, it was clear that their interactions were disturbingly abnormal at all times, but they didn't know, or even thought it was normal. Facing Chen Miu's gaze, I suddenly burst out laughing. "This time, I won't stop you. I'm curious to see how things will unfold." I didn't know what the two whispered to each other in the distance before they walked over hand in hand. Chen Yuechuan's gaze flickered, his throat moved slightly, and he turned to look at me. "Xin Zhuxin, Chen Miu mentioned she's never experienced being a bride, and since we're not in a hurry, why not let her take the bride's place today?" As soon as he said this, the room fell silent. Everyone exchanged glances, their eyes filled with shock and disbelief. A brother marrying his sister. even if not related by blood, was scandalous. Moreover, how could such a significant matter as marriage be changed so casually? Chen's mother turned pale with anger, her body trembling as she pointed at Chen Yuechuan's face. You fool! Do you realize what you are saying? She's your sister, how can she possibly be your bride? After a brief silence, the crowd began to murmur amongst themselves in low tones. Chen's father's expression changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. Realizing his words were inappropriate, Chen Yuechuan spoke softly, Shin Jushin, we have a long future ahead of us, and I believe you will understand. Chen Miu also nodded repeatedly, Sister Shin Jushin is so sensible, she will surely agree. Suddenly, I became the focal point of everyone's discussions. On what should have been the most important day of my life, an outsider was taking my groom. For a moment, countless curious eyes turned towards me. Inside, I felt calm, but outwardly, I had to put on a look of grievance. Since you have already decided, of course, I choose to support you. The disgrace isn't mine to bear. In the Chen family, when Chen Yuechuan made a decision, no one could ever change it, nor would it be altered for anyone else. As soon as the words were spoken, a snicker suddenly echoed around the room. The sound wasn't loud, but it was strikingly conspicuous in the cramped space. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound only to see Chen Muhei nestled in Chen Yuechuan's arms, giggling. You really think you have a say, whether you agree or not? You're not part of today's wedding, Chen Muhei said disdainfully, her eyes filled with scorn. Not bothering to hide her disgust for me, I didn't appear the least bit humiliated and looked towards Chen Yuechuan, only to find him deliberately lowering his head and shifting his gaze away. What are you looking at? If it wasn't for Brother Yuechuan's generosity, do you think you could be standing here? Seeing Chen Yuechuan remain silent, Chen Muhei became more brazen, proudly lifting her chin. Don't you get it? Brother Yuechuan loves me the most, you're just an interloper. Before I could respond, the crowd around us became agitated and began to point at Chen Muhei and voice their condemnation. How can someone speak so maliciously, such a lack of manners? Finally breaking his silence, Chen Yuechuan frowned slightly, his voice tinged with displeasure. That's enough, there's a limit to throwing a tantrum. With just that sentence, I couldn't help but regard Chen Yuechuan more highly. With a few casual words, he managed to turn Chen Muhei's taunts into mere petulant complaints, thereby defusing the crowd's criticism. Upon hearing this, Chen Muhei stuck out her tongue and rubbed her head against Chen Yuechuan. Brother Yuechuan, I'll listen to whatever you say. Looking at Mr. and Mrs. Chen, they seemed indifferent, as if the matter didn't concern them. I wasn't surprised at all, they hadn't liked me for a day or two. How could I not know what their attitude would be? Their initial attempt to intervene was merely for the sake of appearances. Somewhat anxiously, Chen Muhei tugged at Chen Yuechuan's sleeve. Brother, shouldn't we hurry up? It wouldn't be good to miss the auspicious hour. Chen Yuechuan's gaze flickered and he glanced at me, seemingly seeking my opinion. I smiled lightly, my voice calm. I have no objections, but just be careful. Some people may appear tender and gentle, but who knows how much deceit they hide in the sunlight. The fox's tail will always show. I turned my gaze to Chen Muhei. Isn't that right, little sister Chen Muhei? Chen Muhei was momentarily stunned, then, seconds later, became furious, pointing at my face and shrieking, You wretch, who are you calling a vixen? Enough, Chen Yuechuan sternly reprimanded, his face turning grave as he looked at Chen Muhei. If you overstep again, don't blame me for not showing you any face. With tears welling up in her eyes, Chen Muhei reluctantly lowered her head, shaking Chen Yuechuan's arm. I understand. At the same time, she cast a resentful glance at me, the anger in her eyes clearly visible. If looks could kill, I would have died many times over. I smiled faintly and walked away cleanly. To the onlookers, my departure seemed awkward and defeated, but little did they know, my body trembled with excitement as I took the first step towards a new life. As for Chen Yuechuan, let whoever wants him, have him. I went to my room to change my clothes. As I got up to leave, I inadvertently walked into a scene where a couple was intimately sharing a toast, their eyes brimming with deep affection as if only the two of them existed in that moment. I glanced at them briefly and then continued walking towards the exit. At that moment, Chen Yuechuan was affectionately cradling Chen Mia's head, catching a glimpse of my figure leaving, his eyebrows lifted in response. He quickly stepped down from the stage and grabbed my arm. Where are you going? I turned around calmly and replied, I'm going home. There's nothing left for me here. Upon hearing this, Chen Yuechuan's expression showed a hint of guilt. He gently tapped my palm a few times. Don't worry, I will make it up to you in the future. Before I could respond, a shadow suddenly rushed over, throwing itself into Chen Yuechuan's arms while forcefully pushing me. Behind me were steps about a meter high. Instantly, my world went dark as I felt dizzy and then fell hard onto the ground. Excruciating pain emanated from my abdomen, and I lay there crying out in agony. Chen Yuechuan's face turned pale as he pushed Chen Miu aside and rushed to help me up. Are you alright? Did you hurt yourself anywhere? As his familiar scent reached me, I felt nauseous. Pushing him away, I stood up shakily with a pale face, clutching my abdomen and forcing a smile. Go on with your wedding, don't worry about me, Shin Jushin. Chen Yuechuan spoke sternly, his gaze slightly displeased. I know you're blaming me in your heart, but now is not the time to be willful. I'm taking you to rest. I didn't say a word, just stared blankly at my belly. In my past life, I had experienced this persistent pain before, right before a miscarriage, and now, I was pregnant again. I had a premonition, this child might not survive. For some reason, I felt a sudden sense of relief. Better that the child never be born into such a cruel world than to suffer here. Indeed, this was the last thing I could do for him as a mother. From afar, Chen Miu's crying drew everyone's attention. Chen Yuechuan hesitated for a moment between me and Chen Miu, but eventually, he firmly walked over to Chen Miu. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, looking somewhat desolate. Even though I knew the outcome, I couldn't help but feel sad for myself. 5 years of love, yet I lost to an adopted daughter who appeared halfway through. How ridiculous. At that moment, Chen Miu was sitting on the ground, gently sobbing. Her moist eyes shimmered with tears, and her body trembled slightly, a sight that would make anyone feel pity. I didn't mean it, I just wanted to hear what they were talking about. She suddenly stood up and rushed over to Chen's parents. Mom, Dad, you know I had no ill intentions. Chen's parents looked at each other and nodded. Of course we believe you. As the adopted daughter of the Chen family, her lively and adorable personality was much loved by Chen's parents. Even though she was not their biological daughter, she was treated as such. Seeing this, Chen Miu bowed her head in feigned grievance, but her heart was bursting with joy. Casting a triumphant glance at me, I wasn't paying attention to what was happening there, nor did I have the heart to care. Hello, ambulance, I'm at the Jingren Hotel, please come over. I'm not feeling well. After the call, I finally breathed a sigh of relief and sat down by the roadside. Looking towards the hotel, Chen's parents and Chen Yuechuan were all consoling Chen Miu, as if she was the real victim. Seeing this scene, I wasn't surprised, just stared blankly at the distant white sky. It felt good to breathe fresh air again. Lost in my thoughts, Chen Yuechuan came over again, his voice softer. Chen Miu told me, she didn't mean it. And she feels bad seeing you hurt, and besides, she's still young. Don't be too hard on her. Hearing this, I almost laughed. Yes, she's a year younger than me, so she gets all the care and attention, and even when she makes mistakes, she doesn't have to take responsibility. Chen Yuechuan saw that I was silent and wanted to say something more, but suddenly someone shouted, Miss Chen Miu is feeling unwell. And he immediately turned his head and rushed towards her. Just then, the ambulance arrived. My eyes brightened, and I staggered towards the ambulance. The pain in my lower abdomen was getting worse, and I didn't know how much longer I could endure. Who called the ambulance? The nurse stepped out of the vehicle. Looking around, I spoke out loud, it's me, I'm bleedy. Before I could finish, Mrs. Chen suddenly rushed over and forcefully pushed me aside, exclaiming, here. My daughter is in unbearable pain, quickly take us to the hospital. Already weak, my legs gave way, and I collapsed to the ground. Furious, I was about to retort when I saw Mrs. Chen looking at me sideways with a nonchalant expression. Why call an ambulance if you're fine? Such a big fuss over nothing. Let's save it for Chen Miu. Chen Yuechuan, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. I see nothing serious with you. Just go home and rest. I laughed out of sheer frustration, pointing at Chen Miu, who was feigning illness. Why should the ambulance I called be used for her? How dare you, Mrs. Chen's face darkened with anger, and she slapped me across the face. Who gave you the right to talk back to us? Caught off guard by the force, I stumbled backward, my head hitting the ground. Blood trickled from my forehead. Looking up at Chen Yuechuan, I realized he was silently helping Chen Miu into the ambulance. From beginning to end, his eyes were only on Chen Miu, not sparing me a glance. Despite being prepared, witnessing his heartlessness once more still made my heart ache. Haha, is this really the partner I chose to be with for life? I managed a wry smile, lying in the middle of the road, watching the ambulance drive away, my vision blurring. Vaguely, I heard someone nearby calling out anxiously, someone come quick, this lady, she's lost a lot of blood. I wasn't sure how long I was unconscious, When I came to, a face was staring intently at me. Ah. I jumped, instinctively pulling back. That face, so familiar, Lu Huaiqiu, once the most fervent admirer who had covered the sports field with roses to confess his love for me. Sadly, I had chosen Qin Yuechuan instead, and Lu faded from my memory, yet, here he was, unexpectedly before me. Don't move, you're still very weak. Lu Huaiqiu's eyes flashed with panic, quickly replaced by concern as he steadied my shoulders. How are you here? My surprise overshadowed the physical pain, in my memory. He had moved far away for work after graduation, it made no sense for him to be here. As he was about to speak, hurried footsteps sounded from behind. Is Shin Jushin here? It was Qin Yuechuan's voice, tinged with urgency. The door burst open, and seeing me, Qin Yuechuan's face lit up. Shin Jushin, you are really here. Lu Huaiqiu's expression turned cold. He stood up and without a word, punched Qin Yuechuan in the face. Bang! Caught off guard, Qin Yuechuan stumbled back out of the room. How dare you show your face here? I trusted you with Shin Jushin, and this is how you treat her, you beast. I'd be doing a public service by killing you today. Immediately, I heard Qin Yuechuan's furious roar from the hallway. Lu Huaiqiu, what the hell are you doing here? What business is it of yours? As her friend, it's my duty to stand up for her. I turned on my phone, only to find it flooded with advertisements, all about one thing. The Qin siblings, Qin Yuechuan and Qin Miu, tied the knot, and it turns out they are not related by blood. A match made in heaven, a handsome man and a beautiful woman. Their wedding was a grand affair. I chuckled and turned off my phone, as expected, given how much Chen's parents disliked me. If it weren't for Chen Mia's unexpected suicide in my previous life, I would never have had the chance to be a bride. The noise of fighting outside grew louder. I tried to intervene, but was interrupted by a violent fit of coughing. Shin Jushin. Lu Huaiqiu was the first to hear me, rushing over and grabbing my hand. Are you alright? Soon after, Chen Miu came over in a disheveled state, his gaze fixed on Lu Huaiqiu's firm grip on my hand, his face darkening instantly. Let go of her, she's my wife, he demanded. Lu Huaiqiu, chin up, unafraid of his glare, retorted, you don't deserve to be her husband. Hearing this, Qin Yuechuan scoffed, looking at me. Tell our old friend here, who is your husband? With a steady gaze, I responded. I have no husband. At this, Qin Yuechuan's smile faltered, his eyebrows knitting together. We've had our wedding, all that's left is the marriage certificate. Could there be anyone else but me? Are you sure? I suddenly raised my voice. Your bride, is she me? Qin Yuechuan's expression turned ugly. He stammered for a while. I didn't know about these things at first. My intention was just to make Chen Miu happy. He held my hand, earnestly saying, I can give you everything you want. I lightly toyed with the pristine bedsheet, looking at him with a half-smile. Are you sure you can make Chen Miu give up everything for me? I clearly saw a moment of hesitation and evasion in Qin Yuechuan's eyes. This, after all, we just got married. If we declare now that everything was fake, it would cause significant damage to the Chen family's reputation, and with the recent hype over our wedding, the stocks have soared. Just get through this period, and the position of Mrs. Chen will still be yours. He continued his relentless babble, unaware of Lu Huaiqiu's increasingly darkening expression. Get the hell out, Lu Huaiqiu, eyes reddening, roared as he grabbed Qin Yuechuan's collar. After all is said and done, you still care about that little mistress of yours. To mess with Shin Jushin, you'll have to step over my dead body. Qin Yuechuan's face darkened. He grabbed Lu Huaiqiu by the throat, a hint of disdain flashing in his eyes. You were never my equal, and you still aren't. I cooled down, shouting, enough, let go. Both men obediently released their grips. Suddenly, Qin Yuechuan received a call from Qin Miu. Hesitating for a moment, he chose to answer it on the spot. Immediately, a whiny, saccharine voice echoed through the room. Brother Qin Yuechuan, where are you? I feel so miserable. Qin Yuechuan's face softened. He cooed, behave, sister, I'll get you some food. I'll be right back. Lu Huaiqiu looked at Qin Yuechuan with a mocking, disdainful glance, scoffing, go attend to your little mistress before she starts crying. Qin Yuechuan's expression chilled, that's my sister, watch your words or I won't be polite. With that, he looked at me, walking backwards as he left. I'll be back soon, you rest well and think about what I said. Also, his gaze lingered on Lu Huaiqiu for a second, his voice cold. Remember whose child you are carrying. I don't want to see irrelevant people around here anymore. Hearing his undisguised threat, my expression didn't change much. After all, the child was no longer there. Those words were pointless. After Qin Yuechuan left, Lu Huiqiu remained silent for a long time before he slowly spoke. It seems he doesn't know about your miscarriage. I nodded slightly, looked up at him, and said, thank you for saving me. It's nothing. It's what I should do. Lu Huiqiu seemed somewhat distracted as he responded, you seem like you have something to say. Not at all. Lu Huiqiu quickly shook his head, watching Lu Huiqiu's demeanor. I suddenly found it somewhat amusing. Actually, you're really bad at hiding your feelings. I do have something I want to say. He glanced at me, but quickly averted his gaze when our eyes met. Chen Yuechuan treats you like that, even bluntly saying he's just playing with you. You're such a good girl. How can you let someone like him tarnish you? He practically gritted his teeth as he spoke the last sentence. I looked up at him and said, so you're saying I should choose you, right? As soon as the words left my mouth, Lu Huiqiu's face turned visibly red. Yes, he suddenly clenched his teeth, his expression resolute as he looked at me. If Chen Yuechuan were good to you, I'd accept my defeat gracefully, without regrets, but he doesn't see you at all, so, can I have another chance to pursue you? Seeing his anxious and hopeful eyes, I was momentarily lost in thought. His love for me. I only realized its depth when I was on the brink of death, in a past life. I was cruelly forced to kneel at Chen Miu's grave. It was Lu Huiqiu who forcefully pulled me away, ignoring the swirling rumors and slander. After my death, he inflicted a severe injury on Chen Yuechuan and finally committed suicide by cutting his wrists, dying beside me. I can never forget the look of despair in his eyes when he saw me die. At that thought, my heart ached, and I nodded heavily. Lu Huiqiu suddenly clenched his hands tightly, his eyes reddening with emotion. He lunged forward, grabbing my hands again. What did you say? You agree? I smiled warmly and nodded again. Of course, this time, I choose you. From that day on, Lu Huiqiu stayed by my side, taking great care of me. Chen Yuechuan, who always said he'd be back soon, was nowhere to be seen. I watched the busy figure beside me and felt a warmth in my heart. Unlike Chen Yuechuan, Lu Huiqiu never just talked without action. He took care of everything himself. And even when he didn't understand something, he would humbly ask the nurses. Occasionally, I would tease him, saying he didn't act like a wealthy heir at all. More than once, I asked myself why I had originally chosen Chen Yuechuan over Lu Huiqiu. Looking back, the brave decision I once made was terribly wrong. 3 days later, Lu Huiqiu brought me news. Chen Miu was pregnant. Although the Chen family kept it under wraps, Lu Huiqiu's resources still made it possible to find out. This damn beast, he already had you and still messed around everywhere, Lu Huiqiu said angrily, pulling at his hair. I listened in silence, saying nothing. Honestly, I felt calmer than I expected. Perhaps, having been reborn, I had already seen the darkness and coldness in Chen Yuechuan's heart, so nothing he did could surprise me anymore. Still, I hadn't expected that they had been involved for quite some time already. What was I to him then, and why hold such a grand wedding to marry me? I couldn't quite understand and shook my head slightly, but saw Lu Huiqiu sitting in the chair, visibly annoyed. I couldn't help but find it amusing and looked up at him. Why are you so angry? Lu Huiqiu's face reddened. Because he disrespected you. I smiled, beckoned him with my finger. Come here. Lu Huiqiu was momentarily stunned but obediently leaned forward. If others saw this scene, they would probably be shocked. The sole heir of the prestigious Lu family, a wealthy young master, was being completely submissive in front of a woman, even showing a pleasing expression. As I met his puzzled gaze, I whispered in his ear, just respect me from now on. Lu Huiqiu's body shook violently, and he stared at me in shock as a blush crept over his cheeks. You agree to be with me? His voice was distorted with excitement, and his eyes were bloodshot. I smiled and brushed the hair from my forehead. I didn't say that yet, let's see how you do. He didn't say anything but hugged me tightly. Thank you, I smiled back, extending my arms, and thank you for not despising me. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital, leaving with Lu Huiqiu by my side. Unexpectedly, at the entrance, we ran into Chen Yuechuan coming our way. I glanced briefly at Chen Miu, who was clinging intimately to him, and quickly looked away. Only then did Chen Yuechuan notice me, his face stiffening as he instinctively tried to pull Chen Miu away from him. But she clung tightly to his arm, refusing to let go. Shinjuxin, I came to see you. I looked straight ahead, ignoring him. I can't afford the concern of the young master of the Chen family. Hearing my sarcastic tone, Chen Yuechuan frowned. Are you still mad at me? I smiled. How dare I, sir, especially since you are about to be a father. If I'm not mistaken, you must be here for her checkup, I said, glancing at Chen Miu's stomach. At these words, Chen Yuechuan's face changed drastically, and he stared at me. You know. I didn't respond but turned to Lu Huiqiu. Let's go. Wait, Chen Yuechuan panicked, pushing Lu Huiqiu aside. Don't touch my wife. Then he looked at Chen Miu. You go inside first. I have something to handle. I'll join you in a bit. I don't want to. Chen Miu pouted, shaking her head dissatisfiedly. Why bother talking to this old woman? Now she knows. So what? My baby is a million times better than hers. Chen Yuechuan's expression turned cold, and he snapped, I told you to go back. Can't you understand? Startled, Chen Miu could only purse her lips and walk inside with a look of resentment. Shen Juxin, Chen Yuechuan quickly walked over, blocking my way. Listen to me. I was momentarily blinded by folly. That's why I made a mistake. But I made her take medicine right away. Who knew she didn't take it? His face full of agony. Only the child in your stomach is truly mine, Chen Yuechuan's. I don't care about the others. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. I don't care. So why did you rush to the hospital 3 times in just 1 week? Chen Yuechuan's face turned sour, his expression drooping as he struggled to explain himself. Enough. Don't come looking for me anymore. Just go and live a good life with your little sister and lover. I waved my hand dismissively and walked away again, as we brushed past each other. Chen Yuechuan suddenly growled, Shen Juxin. Even if you really don't love me anymore, at least care about your mother. She's getting old and it's hard for her to get around. I stiffened and turned to glare at Chen Yuechuan angrily. In my past life, he used my mother to blackmail me, making it impossible for me to leave. And now, he was trying to use the same tactic. Chen Yuechuan's expression calmed as he gently lifted my chin. Come back to me, will you? This time, I'll treat you right, treat our child right. A few seconds later, I smiled sweetly. Okay, I agree. Hearing this, Chen Yuechuan looked triumphantly at Lu Huiqiu and said, You've lost again this time. Lu Huiqiu just shook his head with a smile, not saying a word, and quietly stepped back to leave. Of course. He wasn't upset because we had already arranged for someone to take my mother away. Chen Yuechuan smiled slightly and extended his hand. Let's go. Obediently, I took his hand. I'll listen to you. And so, I returned to the Chen family once again. This time was different. Officially, Chen Miu was still the lady of the house, and I was merely relegated to a secluded side room, cut off from the world. He always bent down to cradle my face, gently saying, Just wait a little longer. It will all be over soon, and my behavior increasingly pleased him. No complaints, no fuss, as if I truly had returned to his side, but I knew this was just the beginning. Some were more impatient than I. Finally, after another one of Chen Yuechuan's visits, Chen Miu kicked the door open. Oh, the old woman is really delighting in secret here. Chen Miu crossed her arms and looked at me with a mocking expression. How does it feel to be the other woman? What do you think? If I call the reporters over now, would Chen Yuechuan kick you out to save the family's face? I frowned and looked at Chen Miu coldly. Viper-hearted describes you perfectly. Chen Miu covered her mouth and giggled. Thank you for the compliment, but this should be our last meeting. You can't beat me, old woman. As her words fell, suddenly the roaring sounds of many cars approached. Before I could get up, numerous reporters burst through the door, swarming inside. Miss. Someone claims you are the young master of the Chen family's mistress. Is this true? Why did you choose to be the other woman after the young master of the Chen family's wedding? Does your conscience not hurt? I remained calm, watching everything unfold with a detached gaze. I didn't respond to any of the questions. It was clear that all of this was meticulously orchestrated by Chen Mush. Whatever I said would be pointless. Within 5 minutes, Chen Yuechuan hurried over. His face shadowed with an uncontrollable gloom. Good day, young Master Chen, may I ask? Immediately, all the reporters shifted their focus and swarmed around Chen Yuechuan, blocking his path. Facing the barrage of questions from the reporters, Chen Yuechuan took a deep breath, his eyes briefly showing a hint of guilt towards me before it vanished. Ladies and gentlemen, it's true that this house is owned by the Chen family, but this woman trespassed on her own. She has never been my wife, he declared, with a slight smile. He put his arm around the slender waist of Chen Mush. This lady, however, is my wife, the sole mistress of the Chen family. As soon as he finished speaking, the reporters erupted in gasps and envious looks. Chen Mush glanced over with a triumphant look, prompting a reporter to thrust a microphone towards me. Miss, is there anything you would like to say? I slightly curved my lips, wearing a mocking smile. Chen Yuechuan, I've seen right through you. With those words, I picked up my belongings which I had already packed and walked away, watching my retreating figure. Chen Yuechuan's face turned pale, but faced with the reporter's cameras, he could only muster a forced smile. For the sake of the Chen family, that was all he could do. Is everything ready? I placed my backpack in the trunk and asked softly. Behind the wheel, Lu Weijiu took off his sunglasses, revealing a refreshing smile. Don't worry, everything is set. I smiled slightly and pulled out the plane ticket to Australia. In that case, let's set off, for our new life. How did you think of all this? On the road, Lu Weijiu couldn't help but ask curiously. I shook my head and smiled, because I knew Chen Yuechuan wouldn't let me go, and I was even more certain that Chen Mush wouldn't just watch me take what belongs to her. It all boils down to desire. Oh, by the way, not many people know about this departure, right? Lu Huichou nodded. Don't worry, I left very discreetly, nobody will know where we went. As for the person who faked your death, I've made sure everything will go smoothly. I nodded slightly, gazing ahead somewhat abstractedly. If I didn't torment him this way, how could I compensate for the suffering I endured in my past life? Lu Huichou paused. What did you say? Nothing, I smiled, offering no explanation. The past life felt like a dream, and given a chance to choose again by fate, I wouldn't make the same mistakes. It's likely that Chen Yuechuan has also seen the miscarriage report by now. The next morning, every media outlet featured videos of the Chen family heir going mad. He used all his connections to search for me globally, only to find my gruesomely disfigured body in the ruins. He even knelt at the doorstep of the house I once lived in, continuously bowing in apology. Chen Mush was also forced by him to kneel from dawn until dusk. When Chen Yuechuan's parents tried to take Chen Mush away, he stabbed them severely, and they were admitted into the ICU. 3 days later, Chen Mush, driven mad by torture, smashed her head against a rock and died instantly. Chen Yuechuan was sentenced to life imprisonment for intentional homicide, doomed to spend his life behind bars. Seeing the news, I just smiled faintly, unconcerned. From now on, I must put myself first. Story 2, After my tragic death. My utterly despised son risked his life to avenge me. My husband, who had lived a carefree life indulging in pleasures, succeeded in bringing down the rival corporation. He then committed suicide while clutching my urn. My spirit, floating in the air, spun in disbelief. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself scolding my son for only achieving second place in his grade, while simultaneously smashing my husband's collection of luxury watches. Let's pause the malevolent act. I need to switch roles. The floor was littered with broken watch faces and torn exam papers. With the trembling butler and servants standing by, I silently placed the last watch back in its place, changing my grip on my son from a pinch to a gentle stroke. Jiang Qizhao took a step back, avoiding my hand. His delicate yet youthful face showed a hint of coldness. He stooped to pick up pieces of the torn exam paper, clutching them in his hand before silently turning to leave. I stared at his retreating figure for a few seconds, then raised my voice. Jiang Qizhao. He paused on the steps but did not turn around. There's a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow. Right, I happen to be free. I'll attend, I said. No need. Jiang Qizhao refused without hesitation and continued upstairs. The words stuck in my throat, and I sighed internally, scanning the chaotic scene before ordering someone to clean it up. Then, I made a phone call. After a long wait, the call was answered leisurely, with a noisy background. What is it? The man's voice was casual, with a playful lilt, humming a tune, epitomizing a carefree playboy. Yet, it was he who, after my death, abandoned all his amusements and insanely drove my stepmother's family corporation to bankruptcy and ruin. My thoughts drifted back to the scene I witnessed as a mere spirit. My typically flirtatious and lazy husband, Jiang Ji, had red-rimmed eyes and bloodless lips. Devoid of his usual frivolity, he decisively made everyone who had wronged me pay a painful price. I could understand these actions. After all, no matter how strained our relationships were, I was still the lady of the Jiang family, representing their honor. But there was really no need for Jiang Ji to die for me, after avenging me. He stood by the seaside where we had our wedding, holding my urn. He stood there for hours as the wind erased his usual dignified demeanor, leaving him desolate. At that moment, my spirit floated nearby, scoffing, thinking, now he finally shows some conscience after his days of drinking and flirting. Then, under my astonished gaze, he walked step by step into the deep sea with my urn in his arms, without looking back, lonely and resolute, until the waves surged and swallowed him, leaving no trace behind. Only my trembling spirit remained. This foolishly sentimental president, polluting the waters, would surely look horrendous when his body surfaced. By the quiet seaside at night, my lonely spirit seemed trapped in place, feeling as if a salty, damp breeze had swept over, disheveling my hair and unsettling my heart. Upon opening my eyes again, I was back to the time when I reigned supreme in the Jiang household. I clutched my phone, pressing it to my ear. Listening to Jiang Ji's indifferent voice, "Do you want money, or what?" I pursed my lips. "I smashed your watches." Jiang Ji just acknowledged with an "oh," seemingly unconcerned. "Okay, then I'll hang up." Before he could hang up, I quickly blurted out, "Where are you?" On the other end, there was a pause, and after a moment, all the background noise and music ceased, leaving a silence so deep that one could hear a pin drop. "Why, are you thinking of getting a divorce?" Jiang's initially lazy tone suddenly turned chilly. "If you get divorced, where will you go? Back to the Ji family? Do you think they'll treat you well? Did you have another fight with A Zhao? Don't forget, you still have my investment in your studio." "Darling, shut up now." And I can pretend I didn't hear anything. I was quite shocked as Jiang rattled off this string of remarks. I really didn't know how he could jump from my asking his location to talking about divorce. But I knew he was always like this. Beneath his privileged exterior was a condescending indifference. He could speak touching love words emotionlessly with his affectionate peach blossom eyes, and just as easily discard past lovers, playing through the human world, passing unscathed even amidst a cluster of flowers. And I've never been one to have a good temper. As others in our circle would put it, I'm a domineering tigress, wreaking havoc, especially after I fell ill. I became even more of a torment. Otherwise, I wouldn't have caused such unrest in the Jiang family in my previous life. My good temper just now was due to being moved by their actions after my death, which made me want to start over and treat them more gently this time around. But it seemed that no one appreciated that. "Fine, let's divorce now. Take your son and get out," I said with a cold laugh, intentionally being contradictory. As soon as the words left my mouth, I locked eyes with Jiang Qizhao, who was coming downstairs with books in hand. His dark eyes betrayed no emotion. He looks half like his father and half like me, but his personality resembles neither of us. I wanted to see their reaction to the mention of divorce. 3. "Do you want to divorce?" Jiang Qizhao stood not far from me, his tone calm. He seemed mature for his age, but children who grow up without parental love do tend to mature earlier. I watched for any change in Jiang Qizhao's expression, subtly raising an eyebrow. "Your father doesn't love me, and your affection for me is even less than that for your tutor. What reason do I have to stay with the Jiang family?" "No." His expression didn't change much, but his words hesitated for a moment. After a long pause, Jiang Qizhao spoke softly. "My dad won't agree." "That's not up to him," I replied. The living room fell silent for a while. "Is this because I won't let you attend the parent-teacher conference, so you want a divorce?" Jiang Qizhao suddenly said. I was stunned. Like father, like son, both have such peculiar ways of thinking. Jiang Qizhao looked down, as if making up his mind. "You can attend if you want me." I suddenly understood why Jiang Qizhao reacted this way. He probably thought I would embarrass him at the parent-teacher conference and didn't really want me to attend, but he wanted even less for me to divorce Jiang Ji. My heart sank. "Mom just wants to know how you're doing in school lately." After a long silence, I softened my voice, taking a step towards Jiang Qizhao. His lips parted, as if he wanted to say something, but just then, the villa's main door opened. Jiang Qizhao and I turned to look as Jiang Ji's tall figure stood framed against the backlight. As Jiang Ji walked in from the doorway, the kiss marks on his neck became increasingly visible. The atmosphere in the villa dropped further. Jiang Qizhao stared at Jiang Ji's neck for several seconds before walking past him without even a word of greeting. Heading straight outside, I instructed the butler to have someone follow him closely. The butler smiled and said, "It's actually time for the young master's tutoring session, and the driver is already waiting at the door." I paused for a moment, nodded, and retracted my worries. When Jiang Ji's gaze met mine, he lightly lifted his index finger, and everyone else in the villa left, disappearing from view. "Where did you get the courage to think about divorce?" Jiang Ji loosened his collar, his casual demeanor seeming like an offhand question. I couldn't help but fix my gaze firmly on him. It was inquisitive, questioning, and also strange. Despite being such a cynical person, why would he, after my death? Jiang Ji lazily leaned back on the sofa, arms crossed as he surveyed me, his tone still frivolous. "Darling, remember, the banquet is tomorrow night." The banquet tomorrow night would be attended by all the prominent families of Haicheng, including my own family. My family found it odd. They hoped I could firmly tie Jiang Ji to our family yet didn't wish for my happiness. "You have enough darlings outside. No need to waste your breath calling me darling," I smiled, not taking his bait. and sat down beside him. My words were a casual probe. When my soul aimlessly wandered after my death, I saw many scenes I had never witnessed before. For instance, the numerous lovers around Jiangji seemed to hint at some hidden truths, but the real truth still needed to be uncovered by me. Jiangji's expression flickered unnaturally for a moment. He glanced at me, and the smile at the corner of his mouth slightly faded. "Are you jealous?" He sounded self-mocking, almost sarcastic. His fingertips lightly tapping on his thigh. I casually placed my hand on his thigh too. The man beside me immediately stiffened. "Jiangji, husband." I provocatively curled my lips, even though the home flower isn't as fragrant as the wild ones. But Jiangji almost scrambled to his feet. He took a deep breath and looked down at me. "Ji, have you lost your mind?" Jiangji's ears turned red. But how could someone so seasoned in the ways of love be so easily embarrassed? I smirked, continuously speaking without pause. "The kids are already so big, what's wrong with touching you a bit? Are you too precious to be touched? We're not even divorced yet. Is it illegal for a wife to touch her husband?" The air was thick with tension. In my previous life, I always spoke in this tone at the Jiang family. Only this time, there was a hint of teasing involved. Chastity is the best dowry a man can have. In my last life, I always felt disgusted by Jiangji's infidelities, naturally showing him no kindness, and even less desire to be close to him. But now, it seems the previous intelligence was slightly off, thus, my attitude could afford some adjustment. Jiangji repeated, "You've gone mad." Now not only were his ears red, but his neck also had a slight pink tinge. Just when I thought Jiangji would storm off in embarrassment, the butler hurried over, holding a phone. "Mr. Jiang, madam, there's been an incident with the young master." I furrowed my brow, exchanged a glance with Jiangji, and then we both decided to head to the school together. Once in the car, Jiangji spoke on the phone with his secretary, found out the reason. I looked out the window at the swiftly passing scenery while listening to Jiangji's indifferent and off-key words. "Hitting someone. Just because I've donated a few buildings to the school they start showing off. TSK, making such a fuss." I grimaced as the corner of my mouth twitched sharply. The comment was practically pointing directly at me, yet, Jiang Qizhao was eerily mature and calm, lacking the innocent demeanor typical of other 8-year-olds. I wanted to retort but held back. I was puzzled about what could have provoked Jiang Qizhao to hit someone. The mother of the child who was hit viciously grabbed Jiang Qizhao's ear and swung him towards me. "Didn't your parents teach you anything? You're so young and already fighting." After she spoke, she seemed unsatisfied and slapped Jiang Qizhao across the face, the sound crisp and clear. I had just stepped into the principal's office when I witnessed this scene and heard her words. The next second, our eyes met. Then, in another second, I strode forward and swiftly slapped her twice. She was so shocked that she forgot to retaliate. You, if it's Jiang Qizhao's fault, we'll find a way to apologize and resolve the issue, but regardless, as an adult, you shouldn't be hitting a child directly." I spoke without hesitation, ignoring the astonished looks from the principal and teachers in the office. Moreover, from what I had just overheard in Jiang Qizhao's phone conversation, it was the other child who had insulted him first. Jiang Qizhao stood in front of the woman as she tried to retaliate, coldly calling out, "Jiang Qizhao." Jiang Qizhao's lips were tightly sealed, and after a long while, he said, "He told me my parents never attend parent-teacher meetings because my dad has a new wife and my mom is crazy. He also said that those who are good at math don't live long, and I might die in middle school. Then my whole family would die. My dad would be stabbed to death by his mistress, and my mom would die from eating rat poison." Me, Jiang Qizhao. I met the gaze of the child hiding in the corner, expressionless. I clenched my fist and took a step forward, but other teachers quickly held me back. Calm down, calm down." Perhaps my expression was too frightening, causing the child to burst into tears, and his mother exclaimed in fear, "Didn't you say you shouldn't take your anger out on a child? Damn your foul mouth. You're the one without parents." I glared fiercely at the child, my anger reaching its peak. The child's crying grew louder. In the ensuing chaos, I saw Jiang Qizhao making a serious phone call, seemingly busy with something else even at this time. Just as I was about to scold him too, he slightly curled his lip, first glancing at Jiang Qizhao then at me, saying, "I've contacted someone to demolish the newly constructed buildings." Me, Jiang Qizhao. The conversation was still nonsensical, it was hopeless. The principal, trying to lighten the mood yet clearly not believing it, since it was impossible for newly constructed buildings to be demolished. "Mr. Jiang, please don't be angry, I think both parties are at fault here. After all, Qizhao started the fight. The preparation for the new cafeteria is halted, Jiang said calmly, dropping the last sentence. The principal, who was just playing dumb, suddenly widened his eyes, jumped up from his chair, and rushed to the child. This is corrupting the school's atmosphere. Expelled, expelled. The child's mother stood agape, incredulous. My child is so young, and you're stooping to his level. Besides, my child didn't hit anyone, he just said a few words. The principal's office was noisy and chaotic. Amid the noise, Jiang Qizhao seemed detached, his hands casually in his pockets, his back straight, his smile faint. I couldn't understand him. My gaze moved from him down to Jiang Qizhao. He just quietly watched me, his thick eyelashes fluttering, his pupils dark but no longer empty. After a while, I lifted my lips slightly, smiling at him. Jiang Qizhao didn't smile, he just kept looking at me. His delicate little face marked with a red handprint. Zhao, I called softly. He froze. This was his nickname, the one I used when he was very young. Back then, I wasn't yet malicious or sinful. Zhao, I called out again, the overlapping sounds of a child's crying, his mother's curses and breakdown, the teacher's attempts to mediate, and the principal's anger filled the small office, almost to the point of explosion. Yet, for some reason, I clearly heard Jiang Qizhao's faint response, After returning home, I sat in front of the dressing table, staring at a row of psychiatric medications for a long time. Then, I pushed all of them into the trash can. Hearing a slight noise, I turned my head. Jiang Qizhao stood at the door. He was still too young to be smoking, not very tall, holding a glass of milk, quietly watching me. He didn't speak, and as usual, Jiang Ji wasn't coming home tonight. The silence in the villa was eerie. I sighed and opened my arms to Jiang Qizhao. Do you want a hug from Mom? He looked at me for a long while, then finally walked over, placed the milk on the table, and without a word, turned and left. Just then, my phone screen lit up. Looking down, it was a video of Jiang Ji in a bar, surrounded by bright lights and festivities. In the video, his laughter was captivating, the center of attention. My informant sent me a message. Are you interested in him? Although he's rich, his family keeps tight reins on him. You might not get a chance with him. There are plenty of handsome guys here. We even have male models. Why don't you come over? I can introduce you to some good ones. I replied, I heard he's quite the playboy, and I'm pretty good looking myself. Why couldn't something happen? The informant replied, just on the surface. Those few words were brief but loaded with information. After that statement from the bar manager, no matter how much I pressed, he refused to disclose more. As per our agreement, I transferred the final payment and wrote, I'll be there soon. Find some good-looking male models. Big sister, try this. A brother playfully fed me a grape, surrounded by other male models who were also whispering sweet nothings. I bit into the grape, its sweetness bursting in my mouth, counting down in my mind. 3, 2, 1. I looked up, locking eyes with Jiang Ji, who walked out from a second-floor VIP box, his peach blossom eyes slightly cool. He was followed by a laughing group. Upon seeing me, their expressions changed instantly, and the noise around them quieted. One of the male models next to me leaned close, whispering sweet nothings in my ear. I kept my gaze on Jiang Ji, even waving at him with a smile. Jiang Ji strode over with long steps, stopping in front of me. Ji. His smile was faint, his voice even fainter. Hi, hubby, I casually said. At that, the male models around me immediately showed shocked expressions, stumbling over their words. Mr. Jiang, Mrs. Jiang. Jiang Ji was a major shareholder of the bar and a frequent visitor, almost universally recognized there. I stood up, straightening his collar. Husband, what a coincidence to run into you here. What are you doing following me here? Seeing my nonchalant attitude, Jiang's slender fingers gripped my wrist tightly. I chuckled lightly. Isn't it obvious? Just teasing you. Are you really considering a divorce? Jiang looked down at me, his eyes questioning. What? How did we end up on the topic of divorce again? What is he thinking? But I decided to go along with it. You don't love me, and neither does our son. I might as well set you both free sooner rather than later. As I spoke, I held Jiang tightly, watching his expression closely. He paused for a moment. Do you need me to love you? His tone was very calm like a stagnant pond. Gone was his usual cynicism and frivolity. I suddenly realized that in fact, Jiang was still like his old self, showing another side of him. The Jiang before me now gave me the feeling of the time he stood by the seaside holding my urn in his previous life, a calmness that bordered on utter despair. Looking into his amber eyes, I said earnestly, pausing at each word, I do, after that, without waiting for his response. I yanked his hand and pulled him outside. The bar manager watched us, dumbfounded. As we walked, I called back to the manager, charge all my expenses to Mr. Zhang's account. Jiang let me lead him without resisting. I dragged him to my car and pushed him in, sitting on his lap. I fiercely grabbed his chin. I hate dishonest men. Tell me, have you touched anyone else? Jiang looked stunned. Silence filled the car for a long time. The air thick with the lingering smell of smoke and alcohol from us. It wasn't pleasant. I lowered my eyelids, let go of him, and rolled down the car window. No, he said, then why do you frequent bars and let rumors spread? I seized the opportunity to press him. It's none of your business. He slightly lifted his chin, his gaze on me, but his emotions were indiscernible. I grabbed his neck with both hands and bit his lower lip hard. I am your spouse. Do you know what that means? Zhang's lips were tight, and he remained silent. I laughed out of frustration. You don't know, do you? Then let's get a divorce. After tomorrow, I will have someone draft the divorce papers. Surprisingly, he agreed to the divorce. After he spoke, I froze. Although my mind was a mess, my pride made me respond. Fine. I got off his lap, but his slender fingers instinctively gripped the root of my thigh. I didn't move. He let go and said, I'll call the driver. When I returned home, the medicine I had thrown into the trash from my makeup table was replaced with new ones, neatly arranged on the table. Jiang stood at the doorway, his silhouette shadowed, holding a book. He paused, then said, the doctor said you can't skip your medication. I was momentarily dazed. In my past life, my bipolar disorder was severe. I couldn't skip medication for even a day, but after being reborn, I didn't feel the constant pain and madness of my previous life. I lowered my eyelids, my gaze drifting over the medication I had taken countless times before. Zhao, I'm sorry. My voice was hoarse. Zhang's figure noticeably stiffened. He seemed a bit lost and helpless. I have always failed in my duties as a mother. When I became a spirit, I watched my son Jiang Qizhao desperately trying to win over my stepsister by pretending to be obedient and sweet-talking her. He almost fell victim to my power-hungry sister, who nearly got rid of this child left behind by his sister and Jiang Ji. At that time, I cried and begged Jiang Qizhao to forget about me and not seek revenge for such an incompetent mother like me, but he couldn't hear me. Now, I can finally tell him in person. I'm sorry, Jiang Qizhao. Jiang Ji's voice came from not far away, casual yet oppressive. Jiang Qizhao did not move. Have you finished your homework? Jiang Ji approached, eyes lowered. Mind your own business. I stood up, took Jiang Qizhao's hand, and pulled him behind me. Jiang Ji was taken aback by my retort, but he quickly returned to his usual indifferent self. He told me, the Ji family will be attending tomorrow's banquet. I instinctively withdrew my hand, but Jiang Qizhao held it firmly. In my past life, it was the Ji family that caused my death. Despite sharing the same surname and bloodline, seeing my expression, he paused for a moment, then asked, are you going? I grimly smiled, yes. To see those people, those who couldn't stand to see me succeed. My thoughts drifted back to a long time ago, to my previous life. Jiang Ji and I were forced to marry without any love between us, and every day was filled with hatred. In the midst of that hatred, some feelings developed. Jiang Qizhao was conceived under those circumstances. My family feared that if I had a son, my status in the Jiang family would rise significantly. My brother and sister would often whisper in my ear about Jiang Ji's frivolity and infidelity. I didn't believe them, but later, the Ji family secretly drugged me with psychotropic substances, turning me from a normal person into someone with a mental illness, irritable and prone to anger, yet also fearful and depressed. It was only after I died and followed Jiang Ji as a spirit that I saw him avenge me and watched him change into someone unrecognizable. The next day, the banquet arrived as scheduled. I wore an ivory mermaid dress, arm in arm with Jiang Ji, under the watchful eyes of the other guests in the hall. Sister, a cheerful voice called out as Ji Rulin approached me in her little heels. When we were face to face, she smiled at Jiang Ji. Brother-in-law, I smiled back and asked her, how are mom and brother? Mom wasn't feeling well, so she didn't come. She's at home taking care of dad, Ji Rulin answered, avoiding mentioning Ji Hao, because I knew that Ji Hao was currently scheming to embarrass me at this banquet, aiming to ruin my reputation. At the critical moment, Ji Rulin would step forward to attract Jiang Ji's attention, even though everyone knew that Jiang Ji and I had a rocky marriage. They were also aware that my mental state had been significantly manipulated by their design, yet, they still wouldn't let me be. they coveted the position of Mrs. Jiang, aiming to elevate Ji Rulin. I unconsciously tightened my grip on Jiang Ji's arm. Jiang Ji glanced down at me and after a long moment, he looked away and nodded slightly at Ji Rulin. Ji Rulin's smile grew even brighter. She eagerly said to me, "Even though Mom didn't come, she prepared a beautiful dress for you. You always say Mom doesn't love you, but she really cares about you. Let me take you to the dressing room to try it on." I looked at Ji Rulin and sneered inwardly. "Do you think there's something wrong with my taste?" Jiang Ji said, lowering his gaze. The tone wasn't forceful, yet it made one's skin crawl. Ji Rulin's expression froze. "What?" I smiled and said, "This mermaid dress I'm wearing." He helped me choose it. Ji Rulin's eyes widened. "Aren't you too?" She realized her comment was inappropriate and quickly shifted her words, "But that was prepared by your mother." Right, right, I cheerfully agreed, pulling my arm out of Jiang Ji's embrace, only to have him grasp it again. His dark eyes locked onto me without blinking. I met his gaze. After a moment, I chuckled lightly. "Honey, wait till I change into a new gown for you to see." The air went silent for 2 seconds before he released my hand. I followed Ji Rulin upstairs where she opened a lounge room and walked in, first handing me a glass of water, then opening a wardrobe, a white long dress. I stood there, my eyes fixated on the white dress. It was identical to the one my mother wore when she committed suicide. My stepmother moved in 3 years after my mother's death, when I was only 7. I don't remember much from my childhood. But the most vivid memory was waking up from a nap to find my mother lying silently beside me. She wore a pristine white dress and half a bottle of sleeping pills lay empty on the bedside table. She left no suicide note, and her behavior had been normal before her death, but every night after finishing a bedtime story, she would always add one line, "Zizi, Mommy will always love you." So there was this layer too. In my previous life, the G family also plotted against me at this banquet by sending just an ordinary dress. It must be that things have been too calm at the Zhangs these days, and my stepmother couldn't keep her composure and wanted to stir up some disgust in me. Ji Rulin's words interrupted my whirlwind of thoughts, her eyes smiling. "Do you like it? This dress is quite expensive." This was the dress my father had given to my mother on the day he proposed to her. I reached out and clenched the white dress. "Why don't you try it on here, and I'll wait outside," she said, her steps light as she went out, thoughtfully closing the door behind her. I carefully felt the soft fabric of the dress in my hands. 10 seconds later, I closed the wardrobe and pushed open the decorative door designed to be hidden. This was something I had instructed to be made right after I came back to life, aligning with the timeline. The space behind the secret door was brightly lit, and as I stepped in, I could hear Ji Rulin humming happily through another door. I too smiled. Not until I had completely passed through the secret door and entered the hidden space did I see an unexpected person, Jiang Ji. He was dressed in a tailored silver gray suit, lazily leaning on the sofa, his fingertips tapping sporadically on his thigh. He lifted his eyelids, saw me, and showed no surprise. Jiang Ji. I really didn't expect to see him here. How did he know I had a secret door built here? In my previous life, I fell into their trap and was later saved by Jiang Ji, but this life, I had already thought ahead and wouldn't fall into the same trap again, so how could he still know? However, Jiang Ji clearly didn't intend to explain. I pursed my lips, "Not calling me husband anymore," Jiang Ji teased. I choked a bit, then sat down on my own. A few minutes later, noises came from the room I was originally in. A gentle male voice faintly asked, "Xiao Ji, are you all right?" Hearing this insincere voice made me feel sick. I took a deep breath, but then Jiang Ji grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. I stiffened. "What are you do?" Before I could finish, his cool, dry palm covered my mouth. Lies. A warm breath grazed the back of my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. Next door. Ji Hao's voice changed from initial concern and confusion to cursing loudly. I forced myself to ignore Jiang Ji's actions and took out my phone to send a message to Ji Rulin from my other account. "They can go in now." Ji Rulin immediately replied, "Okay, you'll get your money after this is done." The previous messages were from her, saying she was afraid of being exposed standing by the door for too long and had left, asking me to monitor the room in her place. What she didn't know was that the owner of this trusted account was the very person she was desperately trying to harm. She also didn't realize that her beloved brother had already taken my place, locked up in the room. After sending the message, I turned around. Jiang Ji was standing close to me, calmly observing me. There was no surprise or confusion in his expression. After a minute of silence, the sounds of doors opening and closing came from next door, followed by Ji Hao's cursing and screaming. And the panting of other men. The hunter becomes the hunted. Ji Hao had brought 3 men, hoping to ruin me, but now it was his turn to taste his own medicine. Feeling slightly better, I pinched Jiang Ji's earlobe and whispered, "Honey, the show has started." Jiang Ji steadied me by the waist, remembering that after today, we were supposed to sign the divorce papers tomorrow. I chuckled, "After tomorrow, you might not see such an exciting show again, and you won't be my husband anymore." The hand around my waist tightened for a moment, causing me to groan in discomfort. He seemed to realize this and loosened his grip. The noise next door was harsh and unpleasant. I straightened my skirt, preparing to leave this hidden space. Jiang Ji followed behind me. I naturally stopped and took his hand. Jiang Ji let me lead him. Somehow, I had a premonition that this marriage might not end, but there wasn't time to ponder this now, because after Jiang Ji and I left the hidden space and took a detour back to that sinful room, we found a crowd had already gathered outside, including reporters with cameras. Ji Rulin's eyes were red as she accused, "Sister, there's more than one man in this room, isn't there? How could you do this to your husband?" The crowd murmured in surprise. The so-called stepmother, who was supposed. The hand around my waist tightened for a moment, causing me to groan in discomfort. He seemed to realize this and loosened his grip. The noise next door was harsh and unpleasant. I straightened my skirt, preparing to leave this hidden space. Jiang Ji followed behind me. I naturally stopped and took his hand. Jiang Ji let me lead him. Somehow, I had a premonition that this marriage might not end, but there wasn't time to ponder this now, because after Jiang Ji and I left the hidden space and took a detour back to that sinful room, we found a crowd had already gathered outside, including reporters with cameras. Ji Rulin's eyes were red as she accused, "Sister, there's more than one man in this room, isn't there? How could you do this to your husband?" The crowd murmured in surprise. The so-called stepmother, who was supposed to be taking care of our father at home, stood aside in her elegant attire, touching the bracelet on her wrist. "This shameful slut, Gigi, just like her mother." As soon as she finished speaking, I stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face, twice, without holding back. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, especially Ji Rulin, who widened her eyes in shock. Seeing Jiang Ji standing on the other side, her face gradually turned pale. Just then, the staff member Ji Rulin had called with the keys arrived, and the door to the room was opened. A foul stench filled the air as 4 entangled men were revealed. The stepmother, seeing the face of the man at the bottom, tortured beyond recognition, threw herself towards him without regard for her image, screaming, "Howard, Howard." I patted Ji Rulin's shoulder mockingly. "Didn't you recognize your brother's voice?" Ji Rulin's cheeks flushed with anger as she raised her hand to slap me, but Jiang Ji intercepted it mid-air. Ji Rulin trembled, tears swirling in her eyes. "You ruined my brother. Don't rush to defend him," I said with a slight smile. "I've already reported your academic plagiarism and falsified lab results." And the arrival of the police interrupted Ji Rulin's panicked curses. As Ji Rulin was handcuffed, she struggled and screamed. "You and Ji Hao misappropriated company funds for personal use, cooked the books, and made the accountant take the fall. Did you really think you were flawless?" The stepmother shook her head in disbelief. I shrugged. "Your good days are over too. Both your children are locked away. Did you really expect my half-vegetative father to take care of you? Moreover, Jiang has been targeting the Ji family for a while now. They're desperate and out of options. Otherwise they wouldn't have come up with such a cruel and dramatic plan." I sighed softly. "Prepare to face hell for the rest of your lives. The Ji family is on the brink of bankruptcy, burdened with so much debt and enemies." The stepmother collapsed to the ground. "No, it can't be." I glanced at her expressionlessly and turned to leave. I knew Jiang was following me. When we were alone, I turned around. "I'm waiting for your divorce papers." Jiang smiled casually. He stepped closer, lowered his head, and his cool lips touched mine. I didn't resist, until my head spun a bit and I felt dizzy. "Wait, you." As my consciousness slowly returned, I struggled to open my eyes, letting the dim light flood into them. I felt utterly drained. When I fully came to, I saw that my hands and feet were shackled by chains. I moved slightly, and the crisp sound of metal clashing was particularly loud and harsh in the room. The door opened, and Jiang stood there, holding a bowl of porridge. Looking down at me from above, I smiled, not questioning my predicament, but hinted, "Where's the divorce agreement? Don't think about leaving me." Jiang didn't answer directly, his lips curving slightly. My smile faded, and our eyes met. I had a sixth sense that he had regained his memories from a past life. "You must be crazy," I said. He walked over, placed the porridge by the bed, and didn't argue. You want a divorce. But I won't agree, I hummed, my eyes narrowing playfully. So you're playing a captivity game with me. Jiang didn't expect such a comment from me, his expression unchanging. Don't think this will make me let my guard down. Oh, what about our son? I will make sure he is well cared for. Perhaps this was the real Jiang. Underneath his lazy demeanor was a calm yet fanatic obsession. How had I not realized this in my previous life? I glanced at the porridge and then at him. Well, you might as well feed me. I'm starving. Jiang ignored me. His cool fingertips touched my cheek, then slowly traced down to my collarbone. Gigi, he sighed softly. Yeah, I responded and locked eyes with him, his gaze as deep as the ocean yet as distant as the stars. You'll never get rid of me. His voice was husky. I can't get rid of you. I scoffed lightly. It's you who can't leave me, right? Jiang paused, his fingertips still. I leaned forward, arms wrapping around his neck, moving closer. Some people die and their spouses follow them in death. Our eyes met, just for a second. He looked away. He knew I had been reborn, and I knew he had too, but Jiang hadn't expected me to lift this veil of haze. Having been reborn, shouldn't you have let go and set me free? I narrowed my eyes, puzzled, shaking the chains on my wrists. After you died, I always regretted it, he said, eyes downcast, his fingertip pressing on the chain on my wrist. I should have confined you from the start. Was the agreement to divorce the day before yesterday just part of your plan to lock me away? I asked. Jiang didn't answer directly, his gaze lowered, letting me hold on to his neck. His tone was calm, devoid of his usual frivolity. He said, my birthday wish is to create a golden cage worthy of you, to keep you inside. It was an abrupt statement, but I understood it all too well. The first year after the birth of Jiang Qizhao, the year my relationship with Jiang completely deteriorated. The Jiang family was in constant turmoil because of me, yet, on Jiang's birthday, I maintained basic decency. I gave him a piece of jade, indeed expensive but shaped more like a tombstone. If I were to use the servant's interpretation, it would be, Madame Jiang used this jade tombstone to commemorate her dead love with President Jiang. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking at the time, but I do remember casually asking Jiang, did you make a wish? Hopefully, it wasn't for me to disappear. It was quite a provocative statement. Jiang half closed his peach blossom eyes, and upon reopening them, he just looked deeply at me, saying nothing. Feeling foolish, I left Jiang with the birthday cake that had only had its candles blown out and went upstairs alone. So that was his wish back then. I poked Jiang's cheek and chuckled. Congratulations, you got your wish. Perhaps, Jiang and I could never truly escape each other. After all, in my previous life after I died, my ashes still ended up in Jiang's embrace. But this time, it wasn't my ashes in his embrace, but the very real me. Side story 1. I've always felt that although Jiang always talks about keeping me locked up, it was always him who was trapped. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but I find it quite exhilarating. Then the divorce just fizzled out. And I regained my freedom. I was lounging on the bed with my legs crossed, happily binge-watching TV dramas. Jiang pushed the door open, his gaze landing on me. He walked in and covered me with a blanket, shocked. I threw the blanket off. Not seducing me. What's with this attitude? Jiang curved his lips, his gaze sweeping over my body from top to bottom. Clothed or not, I still want. I covered his mouth, flipped over and pushed him down on the bed. Jiang, wait, 2. Jiang and I had hardly ever fulfilled our responsibilities as parents, but one day we suddenly felt a pang of conscience. Jiang and I each held one of Jiang Qizhao's homework assignments. All three of us were somewhat silent. After a long inspection, we couldn't find a single error. Jiang Qizhao's handwriting was beautiful, and his problem-solving was clear. I touched my chin and honestly said, I was already failing math in 3rd grade. Jiang grandly handed Jiang Qizhao a black gold card. Buy whatever you want, Jiang Qizhao. Me, he's only 8, what can he buy? Just as I was about to criticize Jiang, Jiang Qizhao took the card, walked over to me, and handed it to me. I looked at Jiang Qizhao. Jiang raised his eyebrows. Jiang Qizhao pursed his lips. Mom, buy a bag. I was stunned. That kid, Jiang chuckled. I looked at the family portrait on the table, Jiang Qizhao's neat homework on the left, the new watch I gave to Jiang on the right, and felt somewhat dazed. In my previous life, I thought happiness was hard to come by. This life, I've discovered, happiness is actually quite simple.